3 weeks ago, I told you about a shoebox, a prepaid phone, a name, 847 messages spanning 22 years. 2 weeks ago, I told you about a parking lot, a woman in a green coat who knew my name before I said it, a photograph of a little girl with Gerald's nose and Gerald's ears and a gap-toothed smile that looked exactly like my daughter Christine at age 7. I asked you a question at the end of part 2. If you were in my position, would you tell them? Over 4,000 of you answered. 61% said yes, tell the daughters, they deserve the truth. 31% said no, Gerald is gone, let it die with him, protect your family. 8% said something I wasn't expecting, something that stopped me cold when I read it. They said, Margaret, this isn't your secret to keep or to tell. It never was. It's Claire's. I read that comment at 6 in the morning sitting at the kitchen table with cold coffee, and I put the phone down and I stared at the window for a very long time, because they were right. This is part 3, the final chapter, the decision, the conversation, and the moment, one quiet, unexpected moment that finally gave me something I hadn't felt since October. Peace. December came. The first Christmas without Gerald. My daughters, Christine and Barbara, came home. Barbara drove up from Atlanta with her husband and the grandchildren. Christine flew in from Seattle. The house was full again in the way it only gets during the holidays, loud and warm and smelling like pine and butter cookies, and I smiled through every moment of it. I set Gerald's place at the table out of habit the first night and didn't realize what I'd done until Barbara quietly moved the plate back to the cabinet without saying a word. We held hands and said grace, and nobody said his name because saying his name meant crying, and nobody was ready to cry at the table. I looked at my daughters that week, really looked at them, and I thought about what I was carrying. Barbara is 44. She is practical, straightforward, her father's daughter in almost every way. She organizes spreadsheets for fun. She would want to know. She would be furious, and then she would want to fix it. Christine is 24. She is soft where Barbara is hard. She still has Gerald's photo as her phone wallpaper. She talks about him in the present tense sometimes, catches herself, goes quiet. I thought about what the truth would do to Christine. I thought about it every night that week while the house was asleep and I was sitting in the kitchen with the Samsung phone and the photograph and the silence. And I kept coming back to that comment. This isn't your secret to keep or to tell. It's Claire's. Claire, 22 years old, studying to be a teacher, holding a stuffed rabbit in a photograph from 15 years ago. A young woman who had grown up without a father's name, without knowing she had sisters, without knowing that somewhere, 2 hours north, a man had watched her grow up through careful, measured text messages and never once had the courage to knock on her door. What did Claire deserve? 3 days after Christmas, after the girls had gone back to their lives, I called Diane. She answered on the second ring, like she'd been expecting it. I told her I wasn't going to tell my daughters, not yet, maybe not ever. That was my choice to make, and I had made it, not out of protection for Gerald's memory, but because Barbara and Christine were still grieving, because the wound was still open, because adding this to it felt like cruelty, not honesty. Diane was quiet for a moment. Then she said she understood. Then I told her the second part. I told her that Claire deserved to know she had sisters, that Claire deserved to know her father's name. Not to honor Gerald, he had forfeited that right with every year of silence, but because Claire was a person, a whole person with a history that had been kept from her, and that wasn't right. It had never been right. I told Diane that I wasn't going to contact Claire myself. That wasn't my place. But that if Diane ever decided to tell her, I would be willing to speak with her, answer her questions, show her the photograph of her father, let her know that the sisters she didn't know she had were good women who would, in time, be able to hold this. February. 4 months after Gerald died. I was going through the last of his office, the boxes I had been avoiding since November. Tax records, old work files, cards from colleagues I didn't recognize. At the bottom of the last box, I found a letter. Handwritten. Gerald's handwriting, dated 3 years ago. It was addressed to no one, just began mid-sentence, the way you write when you're writing for yourself and not for anyone else. I won't read you the whole letter. Those words belong to me now, but I will tell you what he said near the end. He wrote, I have spent 30 years trying to be 2 things at once and failing at both. A good father to the daughters who know me, and some version of a father to the one who doesn't. I don't know if the money was love or just guilt wearing love's clothes. I don't know the difference anymore. What I know is Margaret. What I know is 40 years of a woman who deserved better than the version of me she got. If she ever finds this, and I hope she doesn't, and I hope she does, I want her to know that every year on our anniversary, I sat in this chair and thought, she is the best thing I did not deserve. I sat in his chair, the recliner, the one he died in, the one I hadn't been able to sit in since October. I sat in it for the first time, and I held his letter, and I let myself grieve him properly, not the saint I had invented in the weeks after his death, not the stranger I had discovered in November, but the actual man, the complicated, cowardly, loving, failing, trying man who had sat in this chair for 31 years and loved me imperfectly and completely. That was the moment. That quiet February afternoon in a recliner that still smelled faintly like him. That was when the weight finally shifted. Not gone. Not forgiven, not fully, not yet, but shifted. Bearable. It's been 8 months now since Gerald died. Diane called me in March. She had told Claire. Claire cried for 2 days, Diane said. Then she asked one question. Does his wife know about me? Diane told her yes. Claire asked if she could write me a letter. I said yes. Her letter arrived on a Tuesday, a quiet Tuesday, the same kind of day Gerald died. Leaves not fully turned, sky between gray and blue. I have read it 11 times. I'm not ready to share what she said. Maybe someday. Maybe that's a different story for a different day. What I will tell you is this. Claire is a good writer. She has her father's way with words. And at the end of her letter, she said something that I think Gerald, the real Gerald, the one in the chair, the one in the letter, would have wanted to hear. She said she didn't need anything from me. She just wanted me to know that she had a good life, that her mother had raised her well, that she had never felt the absence of a father as a wound so much as a question, and that having the question answered, even now, even this way, felt like a door opening in a house she had lived in her whole life without knowing that room existed. A door opening in a house she lived in her whole life. I think about that a lot. All of us, me, Barbara, Christine, Diane, Claire, living in houses with doors we hadn't opened yet. Gerald left us all with rooms to find, some of them dark, some of them, somehow, full of light. My name is Margaret. I am 67 years old, and this is the most honest thing I have ever said out loud. Thank you for listening.